Namaskar and welcome to this exciting episode of Sattology Debunking Mythology. Sattology means science of truth or study of truth. Opposite of that is mythology, which means science or study of fake lie or imagination. Please don't use the word mythology for Ramayana and Mahabharata if you're watching it for the first time. That should appeal to all of them. You can use the word Sattology if you're in the Western world, if you're countering mythology, or if you're in India, you can use the word Itihas. But if somebody says mythology, then the only opposite word to that is Sattology. There is no other word which is there. It cannot be Satyology. I have a very special guest. You all know Rishi, Muni, Tapasvi, Acharya. I call him all those things because 24/7, that's what he does. So let's welcome to Nilesh Nilkant Oak.
Namaskar, Aditya-ji. Happy to be here with you.
Namaskar. I'm always happy. See, in the Hindu, when you look at the Hindu groups all over the world, whether it's Australia or USA or UK, they all want to discuss politics and they want to discuss protect Sanatana Dharma. You know, it's a whenever you bring in politics, like politics means promoting modern political leaders. Now, you and I know very well that even though Americans maybe or Western communities may be a little bit shallow in terms of understanding, in terms of dharmic understanding, but still they value principles. When you talk on the principles or of dharma, then you're automatically appealing to a wider audience than just talking about politics. So why should we discuss politics while trying to protect Sanatana Dharma? That's my question, and then we'll move on to the next question. We'll discuss that.
Great question. In Mahabharata, Bhishma says, Dharma is what it is, which is not very easy to understand. Subtle is the nature of a Dharma. But there is another element which comes from politics, administration, power, the global dynamics, which was true 7,500 years ago. It's a part of Dharma. So we have to consider that reality, the reality of power play, as part of a Dharma. In the sense, it is real. Dharma is Sat, and Sat is Dharma. That is the definition. Dharma is a Satya, Satya is a Dharma, which means if the truth is there staring at us, independent of time, whether 7,500 years ago at the time of Mahabharata or now, or 14,000 years ago at the Ramayana time, it is there. And Bhishma says, although Dharma is there, its manifestation comes in the form, one of the factor, not all the factors, is the power, balam. So the person who is powerful, whatever she dictates becomes a Dharma, by choice or by force. So that's one point. The second point you mentioned about, say, the Western, we say, mindset. Well, partly, and you said correctly, that they are extremely detailed. So much to learn from them, and so much to learn from them for Indians, by the way, as much as they have a lot to learn from the Indian Sanatana Dharma system. So their foundations may be weak, but with efforts, they have built the foundations. And of course, now there are other forces. The fight between the Sura Asura, the good and bad, evil and good, will always go on. So there is this all now very extremely demonic philosophies, this postmodernism, and which is trying to break everyone, everywhere. What are the different words they use? Of course, the women's studies is one. But what else? Subaltern studies, they will use their hierarchical class system and try to impose, which they did 200 years ago, okay, on the Indian system. That is not to say that there were no problems with Indian system. In any civilization, any social structure, there will always be some imbalance. From a chemical engineering perspective, everywhere I call the Gibbs free energy, that it's a thermodynamics equation. Gives delta G equal to delta H minus T delta S, the entropy, the enthalpy, and the free energy, and with the temperature as a term. Just like Krishna is saying, Yada yada dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata. Like Bhagwan is coming here, taking an avatar, establishing a dharma, re-establishing a dharma, you can say, leaving us with a guidebook for us, the Hindu Bible, Bhagavad-Gita, for people to follow. Okay. Even then, Krishna is admitting, yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata. There is that entropy factor, the chaos, the degradation, it will happen, and therefore, periodically, it needs to be restored. But the point I wanted to mention in the context of your question was, their foundations may be weak. There, meaning the Western, say Western Europe and the areas which are now influenced by that philosophy, unfortunately, including India. Now, there are many great aspects of it, that should be taken, but we have to be very careful what we take. Unfortunately, what Aditya I find is in the Indian context, and by Indians, I mean, I don't necessarily mean Indians who are physically residing in India, because I mean, this is my good friend Shiva Shastri. He has coined the terms, or my apologies if it's not Shiva Shastri and my other friends from old Bharat Raksha group. We call it NRI, non-resident Indian, right? But we also have what do you call it? The Indian non-residents. The people who are in India, but in terms of their mind, it's not in India, it's on America. And those people who come here, I mean, like you and me, if we are not careful, we can imbibe the bad habits and give away what is valuable. And again, the colonial times have done a tremendous job, tremendously demonic job, a bad job, bad meaning bad for humanity, but they have done it effectively, is to make a Indian feel inferior about himself or herself. So that's a problem. So if we continue on this, I'll talk something about what we need to do. So beyond politics, also even in the intellectual field, Aditya ji, you will find the same problem. What you are the power struggle in intellectual field, also people are doing power struggle. I'll briefly talk about something that is very fresh, hot from the news, hot from the press kind of thing, and then if you have any additional comments, then I'll get into my subject.
Yeah, just one one more. Like one of the Hindu groups approached me that Aditya Satsang would like to give a talk on Kshatriya nature of Hindu. So I said, what do you understand about Varna? And he was saying, no, we are not talking about caste system. So very shallow understanding. And the thing is, if you build your building on a shallow foundation, it's not going to last very long. If you just give an example that any tall skyscrapers, tall buildings, their foundation is 30% of their total height. If it is 100-meter long skyscraper, then 30 meters will be under the ground. The foundation starts 30 meters. And some cases 40 meters also, depending on the earthquake zone or non-earthquake zone.
Yeah.
Like I was looking at the recent building construction of Navy in San Diego. It goes way deep. Like the building is just 50 feet or maybe say 200 feet. But the foundation was almost 40 feet because they wanted, it's an earthquake zone.
Yeah.
They do not want it to be shallow and right next to the ocean. So the thing is, if you do not understand the basic foundations, impossible to defend it. And then you will be just jumping up like a frog in the well.
Right.
And you're trying to see why they are not listening, because you're not making sense.
Yeah.
You're discussing some people who Americans don't understand. They are looking purely from biblical point of view.
Yeah.
And so your terms are not making sense. So that's why I wrote the book called The Hindu Bible, which is, you spoke a lot about it, more than me ever.
Yeah.
So please go ahead and comment on it.
Yeah. Well, but talking of foundations, if we don't understand where these things come from, take caste, which comes from casta. It's a European term. Okay. In India, it was introduced by Portuguese, who were extremely brutal, just like the Columbus and his folks, and later missions, Spanish missions to Latin America, South America, or even Portuguese mission, like to Brazil. They were extremely violent, extremely violent. The amount of torture that they have done in the Latin America is, there are no words to describe it. And ditto for India. When Vasco da Gama came, the local king gave a wonderful welcome, and the person that you can say the envoy that the local king sent to Vasco da Gama to welcome him. I mean, they don't know who they are, no language communication. Of course, the language communication more than likely would have happened through the Indian businessmen and navigators who were doing trade between Africa and India. Actually, because of the navigation skills of an Indian boat captain, Vasco da Gama could dare cross the Arabian Sea and actually come to Kerala, the Calicut. That's the area. So extremely bad things were done by these folks. But you said the foundation, and I want to say, if you want to understand, just like somebody told you, hey, please, can you talk about Kshatriya Dharma? And you said, oh, but Kshatriya is a Varna. And he said, oh, no, I don't want you to come and talk about caste. Where did this caste begin? Let's understand the foundations of a caste. And you know what? There is our mutual friend, Pandit Sharma ji in UK, United Kingdom, is a perfect person and is a perfect book. And I would encourage all the viewers to get hold of the copy of his book, Caste, like caste, where does it come from? And he very beautifully, with evidence, he says it is a British creation. British already had a caste, all the class, it comes from that class, which in Portuguese it becomes casta. But British decided to use what possibly worked for them, the ruling class, to subdue, the basically local people for their benefit, for the benefit of the royalty or the rulers. They decided to implement that in India. So the birth of caste, as far as the India is concerned, the way it is understood around the world is by British. It is the imposition of a British, and it was done in 1844. I would say that's a highlight, but one must read this very easy to read, beautifully laid out book of our mutual friend Panditji, Pandit Sharmaji from United Kingdom. So yes, definitely go anywhere, understand what the foundation is today. And once I get into my subject, I'll tell you the preamble to that. We will talk about, say, you and me are having a discussion. We can have agreements and we can have a disagreements. Okay, but what is the motivation behind those agreements? What is the motivation behind those disagreements? Suppose you and me agree. Is it because we are just friends? We are talking to each other for a long time. And when we disagree, is it because there is some reason of enmity? I mean, that needs to be understood. And that's the topic I'm going to talk about today. But back to you. And if you're okay, then I'll begin with my subject.
See, the disagreements happen only when we both are trying to understand something deeper. Otherwise, there's no disagreement because you are quoting same Vyasdev, Valmiki. I'm also quoting, and scriptures are so big that everyone has their own vritti. They
Yeah.
notice their section of it.
Yes.
So it's not, it doesn't matter because like in the case of that Ashwatthama, yesterday I wrote a small article, 600 words
Yeah.
article
Yeah.
for Sattology.com, long pending. And I wrote it just to make a few interesting points about Ashwatthama and Krishna's conversation, Arjun and
Mm.
Krishna's conversation, or
Mm.
punishment to Ashwatthama. But
Mm.
some people may view it in a totally different way. It's valid if you
Mm.
quote the relevant sections, because I may not have read it. It's so
Mm.
huge.
Yeah.
And our Kalyug memory is so Sumanda Mateo, so less that we keep forgetting. I keep forgetting shloka, which I used to remember 10 years back. I would quote Bhagavad-Gita backward, forward. But
Mm.
now I can't remember sometimes. Then, then I just say the English ones, which are whatever stayed in my memory. But when I read it again, and again, it looks like new. Now I'm on.
Yeah.
Earlier, I used to quote that shloka in every single class.
Right, right. See, aging humbles us too. I mean, there are
Absolutely.
many things that humble us. Yesterday, Ashwini and I were discussing, we are creating a series, sort of insights for studying Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah.
We did episode on the first chapter. And you laugh at this. When we were discussing, in some context, I wanted to mention Shikhandi.
Uh,
And I could not recall his name. Okay, and I just said on the call, and we just kept it like that. I mean, we don't bother editing. And I said, oh, it starts with a show. that much I remember. And I mean, you can laugh at it. But yeah, I mean,
Happens with you all the
so
time. Yeah.
yeah, so let's talk about the foundations, but today about this discussion. For example, see, disagreement, or when we think I could be wrong, or when we think there are two different claims for the same reality and there can be only one answer, let's say, because it's not true that for everything there is only one answer. Let us say we have to say we have to, like, what was that, India's like Rajapath, the King's Way, the British King's Way, far away, is now turned to Kartavya Path. And now the true Swatantriya Veer, just like Swatantriya Veer Savarkar, Subhash Chandra Bose statue is been there in now New Delhi at the India Gate. Now, should this be done? The amount of money should be spent on this, these questions will always come, and they are valid questions. The point is, there is no one correct answer. Okay, so which means when there is a disagreement, and a healthy disagreement, usually that's a good thing, because it leads to growth of knowledge. And actually we did one session on the growth of knowledge. We
That's right.
also did session. Okay, so think of this as a some sense continuation of it, not exactly, but let me start sharing, and then tell you the very interesting story. I mean, this happens periodically, and actually I kind of like that, the way it happens. Some people feel apprehensive, it's like they think maybe I'm wasting time, and actually, in some sense, actually it is a wasting of a time, you can say. But there is also a strategic component to it, and let me mention that.
You
In
know,
fact, yeah, go
one
ahead.
thing you will cover Jalpa, Prajalpa, and Vitanda.
Huh. Well, I will come to you for a prajalpa, which is say intense. The pro is like a prakasha, like a sky, akasha. Like a space, and a space that is filled with everything, just like akash is everywhere, like a space is everywhere. When we see sun rising, we see prakasha. In the sense of that's also everywhere. It's filling every corner. So with some intensity, that's where you see the word. You'll also find, Aditya ji, that glad you asked, like Prajalpa, sorry, Prajalpa, Jalpa, what else you said? Any other word?
Jalpa, Prajalpa, Vitanda.
Huh. Yeah, we'll talk about that. Also, it's important to understand for our audience and, of course, ourselves, is that sometime the word that is used in a certain text, because remember, Sanatana, the Hindu Dharma, is a Dharma with a library, and still no one book that can define the Dharma. It is that vast. Because truth is something you cannot grasp. We all try, but we cannot grasp. Eventually, we have to realize all that we realize is a small ansha, small portion of the truth. So therefore, there are many books, and still one book will not able to define everything. And it's a library. All other religions, and Dharma is not a religion. Other religions is the religions of the book. This is if you want to call it religion in a very crude translation way, it's a religion of a library. Still, the point remains that still the Dharma will not accept the authority of one particular book against some other book or something. And you said why that is so? Because there is this beautiful understanding in the Dharma of a vritti. And that vritti as a nature, individual nature, that comes from the sattva, rajatama, your prarabdha, your past activities of the past lives. Which means for that, if you truly want to understand what's happening with each one of us individually, we must understand the law of conservation of consciousness, the law of conservation of atma, pradnya. It's not going anywhere. Like you cannot kill it. Nainam chindanti shastrani, nainam dahati pavaka. Even when the body goes away, it's going away. Because of that variant vritti, people actually may fall into, Adityaji, one of these. They may be doing samvada, they may be doing vada, they may be doing jalpa, they may be doing prajalpa, they may be doing vitanda. And frankly, there are many more things. They may be thinking they are doing a debate, but actually what they are doing are hetva bhasa, fallacies after fallacies. They may be doing chala, which is to say they don't care. They don't give a damn as to what is the truth. All they want to do is somehow they are popular, somehow they are known to people, somehow they have some kind of financial interest, some kind of popularity interest, political interest. For that, they will just want to become famous. or be in a people's face. They may have some psychological problems, that's why they want to be with the audience. Otherwise they feel depressed, if they are alone. Motivations can be many. So even beyond Vitanda, the approach that people may take, and usually it's a mixture. It could be Hetva Bhasa, which is like a crude translation is a fallacies, and a decent translation, Chala, which is to say deliberately uh, disturbing a good discussion, because they know that they are a loser to begin with. Okay, so they know if they play it fairly, like think of we playing cricket in childhood, and all kinds of the gimmicks that people would do. Even simple gimmicks like, you're batting and you get clean bowled, right, immediately, and the person will say, oh no, no, that's just a trial ball. We used to have this kind of fun. No, that was a trial ball, so it doesn't count. Now start, let's the game begin now. I mean, these small things that you see in ordinary life, they also come to the fore in so-called intellectual discussion. Because as soon as you get into Jalpa and Vitanda and Prajalpa, it's not an intellectual discussion. If one of the party at least, and sometimes it can be both parties, are pretentiously intellectual. Okay, and that's what we want to talk about. So I said Hetva Bhasa, there is a Chala, which is to say deliberately creating some foolishness, some irritating things to irritate the other person. Chala. And then there is a jati, which is a series jati, not to confuse with a caste or anything like that, or not to confuse with the jati in the sense of a profession, which was also confused by the British, of course, deliberately, okay, to destroy India by calling it a caste. It's a profession in this case. So remember, same word, but the meaning is different. In the Nyaya Darshana Darshana Shastra, the jati is used in the sense of futilities, a futile argument, okay? And we'll not go there today. But any discussion, broadly speaking, Nyaya Darshana tells us that it can be categorized into these three. Samvada, Vada, I'm putting it together. And to your point, people will give different names like Vivada, Vada, Vivada. Okay. So sometimes Vivada is used in a negative way because it's a V is a Vishesha and a special type of discussion, special kind of discussion, and so on. But broadly and simplistically, if I want to translate that, Samvada Vada as a virtuous way of doing debate versus Jalpa and Vitanda is a dishonest way of doing debate. Dishonest, okay? There is no word for it. Dishonest. And that's what we are going to talk about. In fact, again, in our series of growth of knowledge, and then the modern science framework and the Nyaya Darshana framework and how they are together, I was going to talk about this, but who knows, maybe I would have forgotten about this or talked about it after some time. But periodically it will happen. There is one individual. She has, she is very, what do you say, very energetic person. In fact, I mean, she does not like whatever I have done. She will find a way, in fact, she will like instigate, like she's on a Twitter, she's on my mute list, she follows me. I don't follow her. I don't see a need to follow her. Now, in fairness to her, she's very active, active in terms of extracting material from our Sanatana narratives, ancient narratives. Even she will try to study from the modern science. But the funny thing is, if the modern science thing is convenient for her, she will use it, especially if pretentiously she can convince some bozos, that this one somehow disagrees with whatever I'm claiming or so on. She has actually written Aditya, I don't know if you have seen it, by the way, but she has written a book on my When Did the Mahabharat War Happen book. And I'm thankful to her. The title has my name in it. And if somebody does like a control find, like control F into like the digital version of that book, which I did many years ago, whenever 3-4 years ago, maybe 2 years ago, I forgot now. And she has sold, see, think of my popularity. She has sold, and that is, she has admitted, and this is a number coming from 2 years ago or so, she has sold 10,000 plus copies of that book. Okay. So I am thankful to her for writing a book about my research. Of course, she has written in a negative fashion, which is fine. Again, we talked about disagreements and agreements, because through this manthan, this is that Samudra manthan, actually the truth comes out. Now, as you said, people who are going to study this, her work, and many don't realize that in order to study her work, first they have to study my work to even understand what she's saying. Then the question comes whether she's right or wrong. Rupa ji on a Twitter basically said that. He said, "Hey, anyone who wants to understand her work, before even calling out a judgment whether that what she has written makes sense or not, they have to read my work." And intelligent people are doing that. Now that is just a, what you can say, the tatkalik reason, the tatkalik, just a coincidental reason that I just thought I'll talk about this. The virtuous versus dishonest ways of doing debate. But in no way it limits to what she is doing. Okay, there is a whole range of so-called Indic researchers, so-called pro-Indic researchers. Never mind these people here from the American academia, the Department of South Asian Studies and Department of Indian Studies and whatnot, who are just like a babbling kids. Now, that's not to say they are not intelligent. Okay, they are very smart. They are devious. Okay, they will find every single way to find a breaking India element. Can this work? Can this work? The Dalit network, the Dalit Christian network. I mean, you just talk about anything. The women's studies. Recently, Raju Malhotra ji published the book Snakes in the Gangas. Okay, very nice title. What is it? They are grooming. Harvard is grooming Indians with a low confidence, someone who is going to be very interested in a quick money, some quick popularity to the audience back home or otherwise. Invite them for a conference, invite them for doing a PhD under them, make them some professor. Now, these people go back, they go into academia, they go into journalism and create a chaos. Again, many of these people do not study Nyaya Darshana. That is another difference, Adityaji, between when we use the word debate in the Western parlor. Okay, say like Oxford debate. In Oxford debate, polemics, rhetoric, these are all allowed. Okay, and how impressively the person makes an argument in the sense of aesthetically how that person is wearing, what he's wearing, what she's wearing, the makeup, and the style of the impressive style, how it is done. See, these all factors matter. But as you said, if the foundation is wrong, how does it matter, right? The building at the top may look good, but it doesn't have that 40 feet required foundation below. All it needs is just a wind, wind starts blowing, not even an earthquake, and it's going to fall off. And that's exactly what you find. So, for example, remember we talked about a better theory and the growth of knowledge. We did a whole episode on that, so I'll not discuss anything. But you asked the question, is there a true problem they were trying to solve? Did they have a theory? Was it universal and generic in nature? And once they stated their theory, I would say 99.99% of the Indic researchers, it is the Indic researchers meaning not Indians, the people who work in the same field as what I do original research, they do not understand the concept of starting with an unsolved problem. They do not understand the concept of what science is. They do not understand the concept of the statement of a theory. They do not understand and realize that the statement of a theory has to be universal and generic. And guess what? They actually don't never cross these initial hurdles. And in even understanding somebody's research, like my research, they don't understand that once you define a theory, everything, what evidence falls under the purview of that theory is defined by the theory itself. And once you define the theory, all the evidence that comes under its purview must be included, whether it agrees with your claim or not. They don't understand that. So that was our one episode we did. Now, if you remember, Aditya ji and our viewers, the second episode we had done was to see the similarities between modern science framework and a Nyaya Darshana. Don't go by just the word modern science. Actually, because somebody says I'm a scientist doesn't mean the person understands the scientific method. Actually, that is true about the Nyaya Darshan also. Somebody may be a student of Nyaya. Actually, I know quite a good number of them. They have the whole Nyaya Darshan, the 500 Sutra of Nyaya Darshan by heart. But then you puts forward one argument from this avayava pratijna hetu udaharana upanaya actually applied to a certain situation, and they go blank. They are literally like a deer, staring in a headlight. They just don't know what is being discussed. So just because somebody even knows the Nyaya Darshana by heart doesn't mean anything. Because somebody has a bachelor's, master's, PhD, a science degree, engineering degree, does by itself does not mean anything. Somebody is in academia, a professor, by itself it doesn't mean anything. All kinds of utterly nonsensical stuff is being published, in the peer reviewed these days, even non-peer reviewed, it doesn't matter. So we discuss this, the similarities, comparison, but also slight differences. How Nyaya Darshana will get into very inclusive mode of exploring anything. It's also very humble, and so is modern science, by the way. Modern science will say if something cannot be empirically, objectively tested, the philosophers of science, a very truthful folks, understand that not everything can be studied using science, using the science of our times. With time, as the science improves, the technology improves, things will change. Like say genetics, what we could study for last 30, 40 years, we could not study that if you go back 100 years or 150 years. In fact, if you go back before 150 years, at least in Western science, there was no concept of a DNA, no concept of the genes, and so on and so forth. Now, the way Adityaji it is written in the Mahabharata, frankly, it is written in such a condensed form that we don't know what exactly they are referring to. In a way, they give the words, the attitudes, the mental states. That is how it is given in Mahabharata. But Vasishtha is talking about the 23 Guna Sutra, sutra in the human body. And now we know that there are 23 pairs of, the chromosomes and genes and whatnot. We'll not go into that. So that was something what we covered here. In both ways, they are very effective. They are actually very similar. Okay. Every reason to even think things can come independently, but there is enough evidence. And if I ever get time, I will build that and write about it, is how the modern science came from a Nyaya Darshana, Vaisheshika Darshana, Sankhya, and so on. Not just these three, even from a Yoga Darshana that you have written a book on, even from the Purva Mimamsa, okay, which is how to understand the language, Pada, Padadnyan, Pada, Padartha, Padadnyan, okay, and even Uttara Mimamsa, which is to say how to study something. See, for example, Bayesian statistics, Bayesian analysis is done, for example, for things like, is there a life on some other planet, or are there sentient beings like human beings here, or non-human beings here on other planets? How do we do that? Our methods in technology and science are limited. Now sometimes we use, therefore people use something called Bayesian statistics. Again, those who know, otherwise they can ignore it. So yes, with whatever things at our hand, whatever is available, we still try to do something out of it. Nyaya Darshana talks about it. There are certain areas that you will not able to handle. You have to know the prasanga sama, at what point to stop, what point your current technology limits yourself. So this is very important. Now let's get to the topic of the three broad, distinct types of discussions, we will call it. Okay, just to keep that. So when two parties or multiple parties come together, whether it is on a podium, we will see news channels inviting different political parties, Bill Maher's show, maybe it's a one-on interview. So when the person takes interview, the person may ask grinding questions, and that's a good stuff. Otherwise, we don't learn. Different political parties coming together, two researchers coming together, multiple researchers coming together. The kind of discussion that goes on, broadly, it can be classified into these three categories. Frankly, there are more categories, but the rhetorics and polemics, that has no place in the true debate. What Nyaya Darshana or the Sanatana tradition will call Samvaad or Vaad. However, Sanatana is a very pragmatic civilization. Okay, very pragmatic, very practical. It's not in a fool's paradise thinking that everything is ideal in the world, whether it is a Varna system, whether it is a ashrama system, okay, whether it is a jati system. None of these are caste, by the way. But there will always be exceptions. There's some things will go wrong in any society, and they need to be fixed. So it's a very practical and pragmatic religion. Okay, it's not stuck by some individual person who initiated a certain sect or a religion, not by book. No, that's why Sanatano Nitya Nutana, it's willing to change. It's very pragmatic. It realizes the undesirable ways of discussions that happens, and that's what we're going to go through in a classification. For example, let's start here, okay? And using our what do you call the process map, just as a people for people to easily clearly think through, in a binary fashion. The world is not binary, but the binary distinction helps. That is the Sankhya. Sankhya says to understand the truth, that ultimate one truth. Okay, Ado Antecha Madhecha, the one that was there before the creation happened, during the creation, and even when the creation is dissolved, still what that stays, that is Sat. That is the definition of a Bhagavad Puran. Okay, so if you start there and ask the question for any discussion that is going to take place, that you are watching on a YouTube or you're watching in some place, a live show, wherever that is, in a classroom, okay, even a discussion between a teacher and a student, between two professors, between two researchers with two different claims for the same reality, okay, whether it is a quantum mechanics, whether it is a dating of the Mahabharat war, whether it is the dating of Ramayana, dating of Rigveda, dating of river Saraswati, or whether it is say between homeopathy versus allopathy versus Ayurveda for a specific disease and stuff like that. You can consider any situation you want. The types of cows, okay, the Taurian cow, the Taurus cows versus the Zebu cow. What are the differences in the properties in their milk? How do you test these properties? I mean, some of these experiments, Aditya are being conducted. I am part of those experiments. Like, unless we have sufficient time and sufficient data, it can take a decade, another 10 plus years before some of these experiments can be completed. And again, there is no guarantee of a success because we are looking at some different parameters. Some of the studies happening on the population, which is very hard to do, and there is no money that is required to do this. Anyways, I digress. So if you want to ask the question, any type of discussion, any comparison, okay, aim of two parties or two claims, okay, a group of people evaluating two claims, what is their aim? What is their objective? What is their prayojana? And what is their pratidnya? Okay. What is their conviction? Are they doing this to determine what is right? Or are they trying to determine who is right? So what is right is that indifferent, the neutral platform, samyak platform. Because a person, somebody may think, like say, I may think that this is the answer. But if I am after the truth, I am not going to feel insulted. I'm not going to feel bad. In fact, I'm going to be elated. I'll be happy. Prasanna, Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma, if the right answer is found, and that doesn't happen to be my answer. On the other hand, if the person is so much into that me too, or me, then the person is focused on, hey, whatever I am claiming, I want that to be right. So not who is right. So that gets into the discussion. Many times people who are following these researchers, they don't understand, or they may understand, but they will also go on defending this one person. In fact, Aditya, when somebody, someone who may be my fan, and tries to say something in my support, but when it is wrong, it's false, it's not correct, either in public domain, whether it is a Facebook or some social media like say Twitter, I make a point to say it right there, or depending on my ability to communicate with that individual in private, I will say, no, what you are saying, I know you are saying, trying to say that in my support, but that's not correct. Okay, so that is like focus on the Sat and not focus on yourself. What is the objective? Is it to determine what is right or who is right? Now, if here I did not say, write the question properly, the aim of both parties is to determine what is right and not who is right, and I left it at that. I need to change that. just I should say, aim of both parties is to determine what is right. People can only read that much part. If the answer to that question is yes, then we are going to take a certain path. If the answer is going to be no, that the person really, the focus is not to decide what is right, then we are going to take another path. And remember, Robert Browning's poem, there were two paths, and I took the one, that was less traveled by, and that made all the difference. Think of this path on that yes side. Again, please, audience, remember, aim of both parties is to determine what is right. Just stop there. Don't read and not who is right. If that's the question, and if the answer to that question is yes, then you are going to take one path. Okay, what is that path? That is called in an Nyaya Darshana Samvad or Vaad. And you will find some additional words also, by the way. Okay, depending on the text. For example, Aditya if you go to Charaka Samhita, a beautiful text on Ayurveda, the words Vada, Jalpa are used in a slightly different fashion. They are, so it's like on the scale they are moved. So remember, like in politics, we might say, are you to the extreme right or extreme left or centrist, as left of the center, and so on. But what is a left of the center in some place can be extremely left or extremely right in some other place. Think of it like that. This has happened for the reasons that I don't know or we don't know. Maybe some experts know, but I don't know who those experts are, or I haven't come across it. Some difference. But Samvada Vada, synonymous. In Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna is using the word Vada as a vibhuti. In the yogic practice, you meditate on different things. You can simply meditate on what a beauty of a Sanatan Dharma. You can simply meditate on the science of a Vada, science of a Samvada, science of a debate. And that can take you to the ultimate reality. Of course, Satyena Labhyas Tapasa Yesha Atma. It will take you to the truth, and therefore to the Atma and Paramatma and Atmadnyan, the ultimate reality. Okay, so Krishna is saying Vada Pravadata Aham. But you know what? Just like I said, Charaka Samhita, sage Charaka is using slightly different terms. Even to the same word, a different level of meaning can get attached over time or in the context, not necessarily the time, meaning the chronological time. And that's why we say sometimes the things are interpreted in a different fashion. You said vritti is one, right? Exactly same time, place, and circumstances, but the only difference in circumstances is the vritti of a person, sattva, raja, tama, or whatever you want to call it. And the person will be looking at the same thing and interpreting exactly opposite. In fact, that's exactly what it happens here. Okay, for the so-called researchers, but also their consumers, who are consuming that research. So in Bhagavad Gita, that's going back, say, 7,500 years ago, Krishna is saying Vada, or Vasudeva is saying, in what Krishna is saying, Vasudeva is composing and narrating, Vada Pravadata Aham. In the intellectual, honest people's discussion, that discussion, I am there. That is my vibhuti. You can use that for meditation. But now fast forward to, say, the time of Adi Shankara. Okay, now Adi Shankara's time, I have not come across any decisive, empirical, scientific, objectively testable evidence that tells us exactly what was his time. Usually the broad buckets that people ongoing fight, continuously fight, that is that discussion, is like a 500 BC approximately and 700 CE. I will not go into that. But that Shankaracharya, Adi Shankaracharya, he is saying, because the situation of his time, whatever that time was such that people were not understanding the original meaning and jumping into something, calling it that Vada. They think they are doing a debate, which is unfortunately the situation now, for most part, just like the yesterday's instance. And so he says, Vada Parityajyatam. As much as possible, try to avoid the Vada. That is what Shankaracharya is saying. And then if you look at Narada Puran, we don't know again the timing of, not Narada Puran, Narada Bhakti Sutra. We again don't know the exact timing of it. At least I have not found any evidence within it to tell, to date it. Narada Bhakti Sutra says, Vada na avalambya, no avalambya. Do not make use of the Vada. Okay, now of course, remember the context is different, the bhakti context versus knowing the truth in a very objective fashion context, and so on. And maybe the change social setup where Shankaracharya is possibly saying. We don't know all the circumstances. My point is the words may change. The reason I spend so much time on this, Aditya is because somebody is going to look at this Samvada, Vada, and going to pull some words from Charaka Samhita and say, hey, here it means different, or Jalpa means something different. Yeah, it is there. I'm aware of it. Important thing is to use a framework like the Nyaya framework and progress towards the growth of knowledge, towards knowing the truth. I will skip that Sanskrit verse there. It's a long verse. Pramana tarka sadhano palamba siddhanta viruddha pancha vayopapanna paksha pratipaksha parigraho vada. But the brief summary of it is in English that I'm going to quickly walk you through. So what is Samvada or Vada? It is an adoption of one of the two opposing sides. There can be many, but when there are many answers or many sides to it, many different opinions, claims, you cannot discuss them together. It's a no-no. You can discuss all of them, but at any given time, you can only discuss two, one versus another. It's like a tennis match, of course, there is a double tennis, but the point is, one team or one player, that person wins and he goes to the next round or she goes to the next round. Okay, so at any given time, it is adoption of one of the two opposing side. You take that view. The adopted claim of that individual person who is, you can say, defending it, standing for that claim, is analyzed using the avayava. What is that avayava? We discussed that last time here. Pratijna, hetu, udarana, upanaya, nigamanani, avayava. The 5 points, or actually the 10 points, in a Nyaya Darshana, or in the modern science, the triangulation of explanation, prediction, testing, in the context of a theory, in the context of a background knowledge, to solve the toughest unsolved problem. So using that framework, now you can see, Aditya, how these all come together. So now trying to understand that claim, analyze it using that avayava method, the scientific method. Yesterday, somebody asked into this whole fun going on Twitter. Okay, so I said, well, that's not what she has done is not scientific, and it's unscientific. It's illogical. And one person asked, okay, how do we define what is scientific and logical? And I said, well, this is how we define it. All one has to do is read Nyaya Darshan or Sir Karl Popper or any book on the logic. Okay, both of the East or the West. The next one, define via scientific and logical means. Okay, opposite is refuted. The other side's party, other party's claim is refuted, but how? Not through some shouting and something, refuted scientifically and logically. And 5, the last point, all of the above, these are done without the deviation from the principles of Nyaya, which is what? Again, science and logic. Now let's go back to the first one. Let us say the aim of both parties is to not determine what is right, but it is about who is right. And for that to happen, you don't need both parties into that mode. If only one of the person is idiotic, one of the person is a foolish, one of the person is egoistic and not looking for the truth, that is sufficient to cause the reality on the other side. So let's look at that. In fact, let's ask another question. Now here, yes, the one of the party, at least, the goal is not to find out what is right, but goal is about proving something else. The goal is something else other than truly finding out what is right. Again, we have to divide that. So let's ask that other question. Is the aim to prove that one's own claim is correct? Is that the reason one of the two parties or both the parties in the debate have arrived there for participating into that debate? Okay, if the answer is yes, the first thing is at least one of the parties not interested in seeing what is right. But not only that, they are there to claim that whatever they are claiming is correct. Okay, the desire for victory and not interested in the truth. If that is the case, the kind of discussion, the kind of debate that will take place. See, one of the two party could be authentic. It doesn't matter. If only one of the two has no interest in knowing what is right, and all interest in proving oneself to be correct, no matter at what cost or what the reality out there, the kind of discussion that's going to take place will fall into Jalpa. In fact, I had Aditya ji a three-part series. I mean, it was an ongoing, continuous debate that we did for a few hours with Dr. Manish Pandit, and he has been guest on your show before. What that is, I mean, you ask me, I will say it's a Jalpa. Okay, because he did not follow. I mean, whether he was interested in what is right, I will leave. Actually, I will encourage people to watch the Sangam Talk 3 parts debate and reach their own conclusion. Now, their conclusion again can be right or wrong. That is going to depend on their vritti and their ability. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me. But to me, it is beneficial. I see this very useful in social media. It tells me who to mute, who to block, who to ignore, and just not even read that person's comment. It is a waste of time. It's very useful for me. I mean, so even the person behaving in the wrong way is not a bad thing. We just know not to waste time with that person. Okay. Or use that person's shenanigans in a productive way. Okay, for the growth of knowledge, as a use as an education material, which I do with all the trolls, by the way. Okay, so Jalpa. Now, what is the definition of a Jalpa? Again, we can skip that. Just quickly summary, I'll get it. In this case, for this one individual, and this could be true for both individuals in the debate or that discussion also, the sole aim is to gain victory for, of course, that oneself with no care for the truth. Because if you care for the truth, your claim could be right or your claim could be wrong. But Sir Karl Popper has a very good quote. He says, you know what? I could be wrong, you could be right, but let's come together, discuss in a scientific and logical fashion, and we both will learn something. We will learn who is right. Even the person who is right may also will learn in how many different ways he or she is right. Frankly, Aditya ji, that's what happened with me. Like in 2011, I published my first book, and there were, I don't know what different systems existed, but I was not on the Facebook or Twitter, and even if I was not using it. Like people at Bharat Rakshak Forum, people just insisted, no, I need to get on a Facebook. Then I did become active on a Facebook. Now I'm going away from it, meaning there are some kind volunteers who are taking over. I still look at both of them and I do comment. But same thing for Twitter. My point is, even when you don't care for the truth, that person's knowledge can be used, and then Bharat Rakshak Forum, many people in a very nice way, and there were some these idiotic kinds too, but they are also useful, they do act in a useful fashion. They have a purpose, when Bhagwan has made them, they have a purpose. So they also contribute to this re-establishment of a dharma, Indic Renaissance and Indic Revolution. So both kinds, but they really benefited, and I benefited rather, and my theory, my claim got refined. I mean, this is going through, we talk of in Ramayana, we talk about the Sita's Agni Pariksha. Okay. Now, of course, that was the actual event, because we don't have any other evidence other than what is narrated in Valmiki Ramayana, and we have no reason to doubt it. We may not know how exactly it happened and so on, other than the descriptions given. But metaphorically, if you want to understand, my work has gone through Agni Pariksha, the Mahabharata work, for 10 plus years, more than a decade. Ramayana is close to a decade. Okay, and Bhishma Nirvana is not any different. So that also has already gone through 10 plus of years, and it comes on the top. Do you know, in fact, the best test? See, this individual yesterday, the lady who was fighting, she has claimed 3136 BCE as the year of Mahabharata war. What is interesting is in that space, there it is a jatra, it is a carnival going on. There are so many people, you can't even keep track of them. There is an individual who has claimed 3162 BCE. There is another individual who has claimed 3143 BCE. In fact, that individual, one who claimed 3143 BCE, he goes back and forth like the like the wiper of the car. He goes with 3143, 3138, 3143, 3138, 3143, 3138. you know. So he hasn't made up his mind, but he himself also indirectly tries to challenge me, saying, come and debate with me. His so-called followers also say, why don't you debate with this guy? I said he has to debate with himself and decide whether it is 3143 BC first or 3138 BC, and then he has to understand science, he has to understand logic before I'm going to entertain that guy. Okay. Anyways, the reason I say this is, in that 3000 bucket 3136, there is a 3162, 3143, 3140, 3139, 3138, 3137, 3136, 3135, 3126, 3009, 3067. Oh my God. And then there is, of course, like a possibly 50 people just clinging to 3102 BCE. Okay. And then Jivan Rao is basically going to take them to the cleaners. Okay. I mean, he has these people, possibly it will take them their lifetime or few lifetimes to get rid of that nonsense. It may happen or it will happen. It's up to them. It's up to their vritti. My point is, all of this really helps. What is interesting is this 3000 BC range, folks, that the different claims that I talked about, very interestingly, it does not occur to any one of them to come together and say, look, we are not that far from each other. You are saying 3162, I'm saying 3136, you are saying 3138, you are saying 3143, you are saying 3067, you are saying 3009, you are saying 3126, within 100 years of each other. Why don't all of us or one of us or two of us come together and say, hey, you know what, between the two, which one is a superior claim? Why there is a difference? Because anytime we know that the truth is one, ekam sat, okay, vipra, ekam sat vipra bahunam vadanti. Yeah. But also, there is a statement, not exactly Sanskrit, of course, in Islam, which says ekam sat murkha bahuna vadanti. Huh? So ekam sat vipra bahuna vadanti, ekam sat murkha bahuna vadanti. We all, before deciding, we can consider, we meaning say all Mahabharata researchers or Ramayana dating researchers or any subject where we have multiple opinions, as ourselves a Vipra or a Murkha, that's perfectly fine. Because Vipra can also say, the very intelligent person, a Jnani, can say how that one truth manifests itself in many forms. And Murkha can also say that, they say the same statement, but for a different reason. My point is, why these 3000 BC folks not come together as all of them together, or two of them, and said, let's decide what is it that made you say 3136 while I am saying 3067, or while I am saying 3162, or while I am saying 3143 BC. Can you imagine this? This lady who is claiming 3136 BCE is cheered up like our cheerleading crowd by the person who has pretentiously borrowed a claim from somebody else, 3067 BCE. As soon as this lady posts something, the person, actually group of people, they will go and like this thing, not realizing that they are agreeing with her, but outside they will go and claim their own thing. Just like this individual I said, he goes like a viper of the car, 3143 to 3, what is that, 3138, so on. Okay, so sole aim is to gain victory with no care for the truth. That's what these guys are. Otherwise, they should come together, two of them at least, and decide which one is a better claim. And then if they follow the logical path, scientific path, I'm willing to entertain them for a debate. Actually, what Dr. Manish Panditji and I ended up doing is a Jalpa. Okay. And that's why instead of me saying who is that party who was desirous of a Jalpa, like if I say Dr. Manish Pandit, then he will say it was a Nilesh Oak. I said, please go to Sangam Talks, watch those three parts. In fact, what is very interesting, just if, they say, watch the actions. There is another a quote, you can say, that you might have heard, Aditya. I have experienced it in my life, in every sphere of life, every field of life, many times. And I use it. I use it in social media or counseling students, counseling other folks, even the grown-up folks, which is this: do not trust 100% of what people say. Trust 50% of what they do. Now, on a humorous note, I'm going to bring that here. So this three-part debate between Dr. Manish Panditji and myself, Okay. Guess what? Of course, I said people should go and watch it and reach their own conclusion based on their own intellect. Now, Manish Panditji also claims that was a great debate and how he has shown that 3067 BC is correct. Guess what? He has not dared to share. He shares lots of things in Facebook, social, whatever, Twitter, whatever, wherever he is. I don't know what different places he is. I know he's on Twitter, again on my mute list, but because he's a wasteful, as far as I'm concerned. But sometimes the tweets will come. Anyways, the point is, but he has never dared to share these links of our debate together ever anywhere on his social whatever media or handles. Why? If he's so proud of it, for heaven's sake, man, just share with the world. I make a point to share it every time somebody asks me in this context and let people decide on their own. Coming to this, number 2 point in the Jalpa, defense of one's own claim or attack on the opposite claim is made by quibbles, futilities, and other processes which deserve rebuke, such as changing the goalpost, never answering the question that is asked, and counter questioning on totally different subject without responding to this first point. That's why Nyaya Darshana says it deserves a rebuke. Now, unfortunately, we don't have a Nyaya Darshana experts. We don't have an Nyaya Darshana experts, and if there are some, they don't have skin in the game. They do not have the courage to come forward and say, hey, I'm a Nyaya expert. I can be the judge in a debate. I have not come across any, none. And this is not for a lack of trying, by the way. Now, I know some good Nyaya Darshana experts. Sometimes they have limitations, the limitations of age, like Professor V.N. Jha, just an amazing individual when it comes to Nyaya. Of course, he's expert in many other things, but I am saying my interest in his works through Nyaya. Amazing, but he's very old now, so it becomes challenging things. Anyways, so I will say, I will assert that everything that Dr. Manish Pandit ji did there, try to defend his position, was only through quibbles, only through fallacies, only through futilities. But I don't want anyone to take my word. And therefore, Aditya ji, I insist, and thank you to you for creating this platform, Sattology. I insist that the discussion should be on camera, uncut, unedited. Now, you may edit it for removing the wasteful time, which is no meaningful. And so Sangam Talks does very well. So in the debate, do you know what they did? When they edited for cleanliness and stuff, they sent it to both of us to ensure that we both are okay with it. We both, meaning Dr. Manish Pandit ji and myself, we both said, yeah, we are absolutely fine with this. And then it was published, this 3 series of talks. So we both have no objection to that. He has not dared share it even once. And this talk happened possibly 2 or 3 years ago. Okay. Anyways, the point, and so now that should tell you something more. Do not trust 100% of what people say. Trust 50% of what they do, or in this case, what they do not do. Because in a karma, the word karma, doing is also karma, not doing is also karma. Sitting is also karma. Sleeping is also karma. Okay. Anyways, quickly, third point, indifferent to one's own argument, whether it supports or opposes one's own claim or the opponent's claim. Again, I would encourage you to watch this debate between me and Dr. Manish Panditji, or there is another debate, slightly different format, between me and Dr. Konrad Elst. Okay, that is also there in the YouTube. It was published by Pragyata, my friend Darji, and people should watch that, and look for this. How are they indifferent to their own arguments? How they are supporting it? Do they care whether what they are claiming actually comes to backfire? But they don't even realize that. There is another element, like with that lady who has written a book with my name on it and sold more than 10,000 copies, and good for her. She or some of her blind followers, they will write something like this. They says, oh, well, so I have rebutted. Where is your response? The Sanskrit word for rebuttal, okay, is dushana. Like find the faults, showing the errors, finding the faults into somebody's claim, somebody's work. Okay, dushana. What these folks don't know, just like Aditya ji, we have discussed this, like a jnana is also of a three kind, which just knowledge by itself, definition, even Krishna says 14.7 Bhagavad-Gita, that jnana, the sense of it is it's all sattva. When we think of Shraddha, I mean, this is good for everyone to think. All Indians who are familiar with the word Shraddha, okay, reverence, convictions, like respect. We think Shraddha is good, okay? I mean, it's like a sattva. That's why Arjun asks, ye shastra vinimustruja yajante shraddhayanvita tesham nishta tuka krishna sattva maho rajastama. Sattva rajastama. The person, if somebody is doing with a shraddha but not following the scientific method, such as this lady, I will tell she has, at least it could be pretentious or real, we don't know that, has a shraddha for a Sanatan Dharma. She is a very hardworking, and I want to give the kudos to her. She has done phenomenal things in in her limited way in Tamil Nadu, fighting these extremely leftist movements there, okay, breaking India movements. So I don't have anything against her, okay. This is about, not about who she is, it's about what is right, okay. So again, back to this. So people should watch this 3-part series, or with Dr. Kodrad Elst, it's a 1 part, 1 hour long, that one is to understand these quibbles, understand these futilities. In case of Konrad Elst and also Dr. Manish Panditji, or with this lady on the Twitter, you can see as soon as she will ask a question and I respond to that, she changes the goalpost and moves on. That is that quibbles, futilities, chala, jati, and other processes which deserve rebuke. That's where I digress. I said, if a Nyaya Darshan expert is there, Nyaya Darshan expert, one of the Nigraha Sthana position is that if you are an expert as a independent viewing the game, like we watching tennis match, and we know that who did a foul, or a football game or something, it is a responsibility of that person to say, oh, no, that's not correct. And in Nigrasthana, so beautiful, it says, there is a qualification of the judge also. Like some Dick and Harry cannot come and be the judge. And that's why I insist that if there are judges, Adityaji, during the debate, and there should be, unfortunately, they are just not, there are no qualified judges out there, and at least not the one who has a skin in the game, who has a courage to show up. Okay, they are just not there. But even if they are there, whatever they do, whatever the logic, argumentation they provide in support of this discussion and saying what is right and why something is wrong, it all should be on the record, uncut, unedited. Why? Because to err is human. They are also human beings. And it is to be seen in the social media. Like, so, again, going back to that rebuttal. So like she will say, and that others also, oh, so you have not responded. Well, hold on. If there is a dushan, like say when Rahul Gandhi says all this stuff, like should Modi ji bother to respond to such nonsense? Absolutely not. Okay, and this has nothing to do with a particular political party. I'm just taking this because if somebody is talking rubbish, it doesn't matter from which party. Okay, it can be the things can turn in some other situation the other way. If we are focused on what is right, what is sat, then it doesn't matter who is saying it. Okay, so that's the very wonderful things to observe. Quickly, the last one. Again, this is not understood by many, but I missed that point. So just for a second, Aditya. So she said, I mean, she and then many others, hey, I have rebutted your thing. What is your response? Well, my response is what you are considering rebuttal is utterly nonsensical, foolish, unscientific, illogical blabber. It does not deserve a response. Okay, it does not deserve a response. In fact, no response is also a response. Remember, that is the beauty of a karma. Now, what I do is actually I do respond occasionally. Like I don't go and follow these guys, they follow me. But when some other person will send something to me, or in some context, people tag each other, the way it works. Then if I have a time, or my volunteers, they will bring it to my attention and I'll use it for educational purposes. Absolutely. I plan to use it. And I thank these people. If they haven't done what they have done, my work would have become even harder. So it makes it easy for me to show how Arundhati Vasishta is a phenomenal observation. Especially when they try to discredit Arundhati Vasishta, it creates humongous humor, laughing moments that people will not imagine. All they have to do and go and watch certain videos. Okay, so that rebuttal, why there are many types of rebuttal which are not rebuttals. Okay, for example, therefore I gave example of Rahul Gandhi and Modi ji's and whatever Rahul Gandhi keeps on blabbering everywhere and totally creating a humor and laughter out of this. Same things are happening here. For example, in the rebuttals, dushana, there are many types of dushana which are not to be considered a genuine rebuttal or an authentic rebuttal or useful rebuttal. For example, there is a asitya, meaning asatya, false rebuttal. A person wrote something and think it's a rebuttal. There is a viruddha rebuttal. Do you know what viruddha dushana? Asat dushana. Do you know what that means? The person is thinking he is or she is trying to rebut or break the other claim. In the process, actually, they don't even touch that claim. They end up destroying their own claim, viruddha or tangential. There are these different types. Anyways, there are many. Sometime we might have already discussed. We'll discuss it another time. Quickly, last one, vitanda. Now, here, not only the person is not interested in what is right, not only the person is interested in proving one's own position to be right or as a correct position, pretentiously or otherwise. See, here when we come, both parties possibly may want to claim their position is correct. Why even go here? Even right here, when two parties come to debate, as a basic level, they may have a feeling coming into the discussion that, yeah, I am right. And nothing wrong with that. But if they have this conviction, like into the basic moral codes, ahimsa satyamasteya aste satya, so satyameva jayate, that path, if they have a conviction in that, then they will be very happy when somebody points out their true error. Okay, so that is even not there. But even the another level of degradation is what? The person who is getting into this business does not have his or her own position or a claim. All that person wants to say is this guy is wrong. This guy doesn't know what he or she is doing. Okay, that's all they want to say. If that's the case, so if the aim is not even to prove one's claim correct, because he or she doesn't have their own claim, then what they do is vitanda. Again, Nyaya Darshana definition is Swapratipaksha Sthapana Hino Vitanda. One does not have a claim of one's own. Sole desire is to merely attack the opposite side and the claim. Sole endeavor is to carp at the arguments of one's opponent. Array, what happened there? What happened there? This like that. And one does not endeavor to establish anything. They are incapable. They are incompetent. They are mood. They are foolish. Okay. Now, I'm done, Aditya. This is a very good framework to use. Have it in front of you. You can print it. And watching any discussion on the TV, between the politicians, anywhere. Now you have to have your vritti, meaning your background, how much knowledge you have comes into the picture. So you have to do everything in your sadhana to grow your knowledge. Otherwise, it's all Greek to you. If somebody is talking about quantum mechanics, it's all Greek to you. Okay, one so-called what you call business expert saying Nilesh is claiming quantum mechanics. Ha ha ha. It would be great. He would have come and discussed with me. Now, you know what? He's disqualified. He has shown with his behavior in public domain, and my volunteers have documented all the good proof of it. Utterly nonsensical individual. Now somebody a few days ago said, but so and so says he's a decent fellow. I said, that is his experience. That is not my experience. Actually, I had, this one individual, again, I don't like to name names. That individual has a certain skill set, and actually it can be tremendously useful for Indic Revolution, Indic Renaissance, and so on. And to an extent, it is useful. Unfortunately, the person is like, has whatever his own complexities, own inferiority complex. This must be a very lethal soup out there, mental soup. Unfortunately, the outcome is very undesirable. That is a problem. Okay, even that fellow is also into this vitanda. But there are many others out there. All you have to do is open your eyes. Just keep your eyes open. Jnana anjana shalakaya chakshuranmilitam. Just keep the eyes open. Anjan. Have a anjan in your eyes. This is a anjan, Adityaji. Okay, Samvada, Jalpa, Vitanda. And you can use this. This is not the only framework, but you can use this in combination with how the growth of knowledge comes, and in combination with the methods, the framework of modern science and Avayava of Nyaya Darshana to analyze any claim. Uh, thank you. Back to you, Aditya
No, आजकल अंजन को लोग मंजन बना दिया है. Like people take spirituality as so much. Jnananjana, Chakshu, like people do not know that Chakshu Netra, Jnana Netra, two different.
Yes.
And if you look from Gita Netra, Dharma Netra, Dharma Chakshu, then you see it completely different.
True.
But if you see just from Chakshu, then you can't analyze anything.
Correct.
Because a lot of things which are seen is actually not the things.
Like a Charvak, na? Charvak is
Charvak.
only saying the Pratyaksha in the sense of only sense perception.
Correct.
Right? That is only correct. Nothing else is correct. That's what Charvaka thinking is,
And Charvaka was known as a Rakshas in Mahabharata.
Yeah.
He's not known as Pandit, or he was punished. So,
Yeah.
Nowadays people to glorify Charvak, if you want to
they want to use the name,
use the name.
Yeah.
And those people speak on Ramayana Mahabharata also. I'm just shocked. They publicly proclaim that they're Nastic, and they'll speak on Ramayana Mahabharata. And
see, they provide the educational material, Aditya. See, just like as I said, Bhagwan has a plan for everyone. Bhagwan, the whole creation. Okay, I mean, Bhagwan doesn't have to do it even a conscious way. Bhagwan is always conscious, Satchit Ananda Vigraha, but it is such an automated machine that even people start wondering if the Bhagwan exists, because he has made it such an automated one. He says, where is Bhagwan? Where is Bhagwan? Yeah. So these people actually contribute in their own ways, See, that's all they can contribute. We cannot blame them. That's all they have. See, the Charvaka limitation is what they have. Okay, but maybe by some coincidence, they don't have that sense, or we should say, to keep their mouth shut, like Mark Twain said. Don't open the mouth and remove all the doubt. Who you are. We should take it in a positive way, because we can make use of it as an educational material for the benefit of the seekers.
The fact that they're featured in the Sattology, we are respecting them, because we are honoring them by even mentioning them here.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
Because these people, they, it's become fashionable to tell people I'm a Nastic. Very and Nastic definition given by Yudhishthir and Yaksha is in my book. Pandavas, the famous five. Yudhishthir Maharaj calls him as Murkha.
Yeah.
And is Yudhishthir Maharaj telling, I am not saying anything, is called them Murkha. And also Vitanda is very famous in that community. Because they want to create more acceptability. I know why they are doing it. Create more acceptability so people can appreciate this is a neutral guy. But
yeah, see, it's the when they use, I mean, in general, anywhere, east, west, wherever, when they use the word atheist, it is actually a very lazy thing. They don't want to do anything. It's like a cop out. It's like in the Indian community, people saying, "Oh, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual." And I think I told you, Ashwini says that means you don't do a damn thing, and that's actually true consistently. Exactly. They don't want to say spiritual is like sometime inside my something happens. Yeah, that we know. You have a atma,
psychedelic.
You have Atma, just it has too many coatings that even you don't know who you are, that is right.
No, when I wrote this last book, Yoga, Transcending the Mind, Patanjali makes it so easy for people to follow Bhagavad-Gita. He has not deviated from the topic. He is following, and if anyone knows Bhagavad-Gita, will automatically know Patanjali, because there is nothing different over there. But the way he has put in serial orders, sadhana path, samadhi path, vibhuti path, and kaivalya path, it makes it so natural. But he's reaching the same conclusion. Madhyate nantaratmana, yoginam api sarvesham madhyate nantaratmana. It's reaching the same conclusion, but in a very methodical way. But when I look at these so-called atheism, we can always debate atheism means non-believer in Abrahamic faith, that is atheist. But you cannot leave dharma. It's you. It's you who you are.
Yeah.
And Gita is so practical that doing your own swadharma is far better than doing somebody else's swadharma better. So even if you can do your own Swadharma faultily, it's still better than somebody doing somebody else's Swadharma better.
Yes.
But the today's the society is, oh, we can be anybody you want. No, you cannot be. You're born with the
Correct.
nature.
Yeah. See the tattoos, like you see the tattoos, I mean, I'm just taking it on a humorous note. The tattoos is in some sense, reflection of just like, Modi ji, I mean, for balancing environment or whatever the idea was, you heard the news, right? Had the cheetahs coming from, I mean, brought from Africa to
Namibia.
introduce into India, right? So the joke on a humorous note, I'm saying the desire to have a tattoo is that desire to have a skin like a cheetah or a tiger. See, if Bhagwan wanted us to have that, Bhagwan might have given us,
Given us. That's right.
ready made, So,
And for all the viewers who are joining, do listen to the entire playlist of Nilesh ji because it's been 104 videos now. And check out those each and every topic Nilesh ji has covered. And sometimes we have discussed many issues which we do before and after. That's like you call it honey, sweetening it so that you can digest the middle part very easily. And please do that. Refer to the forward back instruction. And I know some of you are quoting us also. So when you quote something from these series, then do give a reference so that
yes.
it helps us. We don't promote ourselves. We don't do any SEO on our channel. Nothing. Everything is organic. We all depend. We all want the knowledge to grow organically because it's not a capsule, and we can spend a lot of money on promoting it. We can be easily crossing 200,000, but the reason is those viewership is not real. And we
Yeah.
have seen from Fox News and other channels, I've spoken to many executives. He said their channels grow because they're organic. So they have 8 million means 8 million they have.
Hmm. Hmm.
We don't discuss political topics. We don't discuss any masala topics, no Bollywood, no. And we do support many of those. Some of them we don't support, but the purposely we don't do that. Otherwise, we'll grow much popular. So we depend on you to share it and we depend on you to spread it. We don't want you to stop using the word mythology. So thank you so much, Dileshji, and namaste. And all the
Namaskar.
American viewers who are watching live right now, thank you for spending your Saturdays with us every week. Namaste.
Namaskar.